The night Callista Rowan uncovered the final piece of the puzzle, she realized the greatest danger hadn't been the lies, betrayals, or even the shadowy enemies stalking her. It was the truth itself, waiting in silence to destroy everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and survival. Callista Rowan had built her life on the illusion of permanence. At 39 years old, she carried herself with the poise of someone who had fought for every inch of stability. A celebrated investigative journalist based in Portland, she had spent nearly 2 decades carving out a reputation for uncovering truths that others preferred buried. Corporations, politicians, criminal enterprises, Callista had stared them all down with her relentless pen and unflinching courage. But lately, the shadows seemed to have turned their gaze back on her. Her office at the newspaper, once a haven filled with cluttered notes, sticky reminders, and half-drunk cups of coffee, felt less like a fortress and more like a cage. She had been assigned fluff pieces for months now, charity galas, city council ribbon cuttings, lifestyle features that could have been written by anyone with a pulse and a keyboard. Her editor, once her greatest ally, claimed it was to give her space after her divorce. The divorce. Even now, the word made her jaw clench. 14 years of marriage reduced to a legal document signed with a trembling hand. Her ex-husband, Daniel, had been many things: charming, ambitious, attentive when it suited him. But in the end, he had revealed himself as something worse than unfaithful. He was careless with her heart, reckless with her trust. His affair had been with a woman half her age, someone who had interned at Callista's paper. Wounds like that didn't heal clean. On the night that truly unraveled her carefully mended stability, Callista had returned home late. The October air was damp, mist curling along the pavement like restless spirits. She climbed the narrow stairs to her townhouse apartment, her bag heavy with documents she couldn't yet place in the public eye. It was her latest project, something she hadn't even shared with her editor. Something dangerous. She turned the key and felt the subtle resistance. The door wasn't locked. Her instinct screamed, but before she could retreat, the smell of cigarettes, harsh, unfamiliar, greeted her from within. She pushed the door open, slowly, inch by inch. Her heart hammered as she stepped inside. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Her desk had been disturbed. Papers shuffled, files missing. A half-burned cigarette smoldered in the ashtray she hadn't touched in years. On the table lay a single sheet of paper. "Stop digging, Callista. You won't like what you find." Her blood ran cold. The story she had been working on involved a powerful conglomerate, Industries, a shadowy entity with interests ranging from private security to energy contracts across 3 continents. On the surface, Erivos was legitimate, its executives shaking hands with senators and presidents. But whispers spoke of disappearances, environmental devastation, and a private intelligence wing that operated beyond laws. Callista had obtained fragments of evidence, whistleblower testimonies, coded memos, and satellite images. Enough to hint at something massive, too massive to name without proof. And now someone knew. The note was no idle warning. Her instincts told her this was the kind of story that could swallow her whole. And yet, the fire in her chest burned brighter than her fear. She picked up the note, crumpled it, and set it aflame in the kitchen sink. Whoever thought intimidation would silence her had gravely miscalculated. Still, she needed to be smarter. She began backing up files onto encrypted drives, scattering copies across cloud servers, mailing flash drives to trusted contacts. Her career had taught her one thing: survival wasn't just about courage, but foresight. But foresight wasn't enough to anticipate betrayal. 2 nights later, Callista received a message from her closest confidant, her childhood friend Mara. "Meet me at our spot. Urgent." Their spot was a coffee house tucked away on Hawthorne, where the lights were warm and the barista knew their orders by heart. Callista arrived to find Mara already seated, her hands trembling around a mug. "Cal," she whispered, eyes darting nervously. "You need to stop this story." Callista's stomach sank. "What are you talking about?" Mara slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photographs, Callista walking to her car, Callista at the grocery store, Callista asleep in her bed. Her blood iced. Where did you get these? They sent them to me, Mara said, voice cracking. With a message. If I don't convince you to walk away, they'll come after me. And my family. Callista's mind spun. Mara, her anchor since high school, was now caught in the crossfire. She reached for her friend's hand, but Mara pulled back as though burned. I can't do this anymore, Cal, Mara whispered. I'm sorry. And just like that, Mara was gone. Callista's enemies weren't content with warnings. Within days, her world unraveled. Her editor called her in, face tight. You've crossed a line. I don't know what you're doing, but sources are claiming you've been fabricating leads. The board wants you suspended.
What?
That's insane.
Callista shot back.
You know my record. Who's saying this? But he wouldn't meet her eyes. The answer was clear. Arrivos had infiltrated even here. Her suspension wasn't just professional ruin. It cut off her resources, her credibility. The walls closed in. That night, as she paced her apartment, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered cautiously. A distorted voice. You don't understand the scale of what you're poking at. Arrivos doesn't forgive. Walk away, or you won't have anything left to lose. Callista swallowed hard. Then you don't understand me. I don't stop until the truth is out. The line went dead. Moments later, the explosion ripped through her apartment. She had stepped onto the fire escape just before it happened, driven by a gut instinct she couldn't explain. The blast sent flames roaring through her living room, shattering glass, consuming everything. Her body slammed against the railing, pain radiating down her side. She scrambled down the ladder as smoke filled the night sky. Her sanctuary turned to ash. She didn't call the fire department. She didn't call the police. She knew better. This wasn't random, it was war. Callista vanished into the city's veins, moving like a ghost. She used cash, avoided cameras, and switched burner phones. She sought shelter in the one place they wouldn't think to look, an abandoned warehouse near the Willamette River, where she had once interviewed a group of activists. Here, she pieced together the shards of her investigation. Arrivos wasn't just a corporation, it was a machine fueled by war, chaos, and silence. Their private security division had been linked to black site prisons overseas. Their energy subsidiary funneled billions into shell companies. And at the center was a name whispered in dread, Dorian Vega, Arrivos' enigmatic CEO. But to expose Vega, she needed more than shadows and rumors. She needed someone inside. That's when she remembered Elias Mercer. A former intelligence officer turned whistleblower, Elias had once shared drinks with Callista after she'd published a piece exposing government overreach. He was the kind of man who carried secrets like scars. If anyone could help her navigate this labyrinth, it was he. She reached out through encrypted channels. Days passed in silence before a reply arrived.
You shouldn't have contacted me.
But if you're serious, meet me tomorrow, 10 p.m., under the Burnside Bridge.
Come alone.
Callista stared at the message. It could be a trap. But then again, so was her entire life. Rain hammered the city as Callista stood beneath the bridge, her hood pulled low. Shadows stretched long across the wet pavement. Every sound, a car passing, water dripping, made her pulse spike. Then he appeared. Elias Mercer, older, harder, his face carved by years of running. You look terrible, he said bluntly. You're not exactly glowing, she shot back. Despite the edge, relief coursed through her veins. Here was someone who hadn't yet abandoned her. They spoke in low tones, her words tumbling out, the threats, the fire, the photographs, the note. Elias listened, expression grim. You don't know what you're tangled in, he finally said. Arrivos isn't a company. It's a state without borders. Vega doesn't just own assets. He owns people. Politicians, generals, even journalists. I don't care, Callista said fiercely. People are dying. Someone has to expose him. Elias studied her, then nodded slowly. Then you'll need proof that can't be erased. And I know where to find it. Elias led her into a world she had only glimpsed before, Safe houses hidden in derelict neighborhoods, encrypted servers humming in secret basements, informants who spoke in riddles. Piece by piece, they traced Arrivos's web. Documents stolen from a shell company in Panama. Financial trails leading to black operations in Eastern Europe. Names of politicians who had quietly accepted bribes. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. One night, as they sifted through files in an abandoned motel, headlights flooded the window. Men in tactical gear stormed in. Gunfire erupted. Elias shoved Callista behind a desk, returning fire with ruthless precision. Bullets tore through plaster, screams echoed, and glass shattered. When silence fell, 3 men lay bleeding on the floor. Callista's hands shook as she clutched her recorder. "This is bigger than I imagined," she whispered. Elias's jaw tightened. "This is only the beginning." Just as Callista began to trust Elias, cracks appeared. She noticed late-night calls he wouldn't explain, documents he refused to share. One evening, while he was out, she rifled through his bag. What she found made her blood turn to ice. A file with her name, photographs, surveillance logs, even notes about her movements. At the bottom, a signed contract. Elias Mercer, consultant, Arrivos Industries. Her stomach heaved. He wasn't her ally. He was their weapon. When Elias returned, she was waiting with her gun drawn. "Why?" Her voice trembled with rage. His face hardened. "Because you can't win. I tried fighting them once. They destroyed everything I had. The only way to survive is to serve them." "And me?" she spat. "You are just leading me into a trap?" "No," Elias said quietly. "I was trying to keep you alive." The sound of approaching footsteps cut the moment short. Arrivos agents swarmed the motel. Elias grabbed her wrist. "Run, Callista.
Now."
For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Could she trust him, even after this? The answer would haunt her forever. Callista fled into the night, chased by shadows that seemed endless. Every corner, every alley, every flicker of headlights threatened death. Elias's voice echoed in her mind. The only way to survive is to serve them. But Callista refused to surrender. She vanished into freight yards, hitching rides on cargo trucks, crossing state lines under assumed names. She became a ghost in her own country. But even ghosts needed purpose. Her investigation was no longer about a story. It was survival. It was justice. It was revenge. And in the ruins of her old life, Callista Rowan vowed she would burn Arrivos to the ground, or be buried in its ashes. The city pulsed with a strange rhythm the next morning. For Callista Rowan, the world had tilted into a sharp new clarity. She had uncovered the threads of betrayal, danced through deception, and watched enemies crumble beneath the weight of their greed. But the story wasn't finished, not yet. The shadows were restless, secrets still stirred beneath polished surfaces, and the people she loved were still in danger. Her reflection in the window of her loft startled her. She looked stronger, older somehow, her dark hair wild from sleepless nights, green eyes glimmering with determination that hadn't existed months ago. She was no longer just a renowned investigative journalist with a reputation for digging too deep. She had become a soldier in a private war, and this final battle would decide everything. Rain fell in relentless sheets outside her building, streaking glass with silver ribbons. She leaned against the frame, coffee cooling in her hand, when her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Callista Rowan. The voice purred, too familiar, too venomous. Her breath froze. Isabella Cortez. The woman she thought was gone forever. The adversary who had vanished after the fire at the abandoned foundry. Callista had convinced herself Isabella was dead, but now. "You thought you'd buried me in the flames," Isabella hissed, her accent sharp. "But you should know better. Ghosts always return." Callista's hand tightened on the mug. "If you're alive, you're still losing. I have everything I need to bring you and your entire network down." A low laugh.
"Do you?
Or is it that you've only seen the pieces I allowed you to see?" The line went dead. Callista's pulse thundered. If Isabella were alive, then the stakes had just escalated beyond anything she imagined. And worse, Isabella had always been a master of manipulation. If she were playing a game, the board was much larger than Callista thought. By afternoon, the rain had cleared, leaving streets slick and shining. Callista walked briskly toward the courthouse, where Miles Grayson, the district attorney and her uneasy ally, was preparing to move forward with indictments against several key figures tied to the conspiracy. "Miles," she said as she entered his office, "we have a bigger problem. Isabella's alive." He froze mid-step, the file in his hand nearly slipping. "That's impossible. We had confirmation." "Forget confirmation. She called me this morning. She knows I'm moving closer to unraveling her empire." Miles swore under his breath. "Then she's going to act
Fast.
If she feels cornered, she'll burn the whole city down to take me with her," Callista finished grimly. But it wasn't just Isabella. Behind her loomed something larger. Whispers of foreign investors, offshore accounts, private mercenaries. Callista remembered fragments she'd pieced together. The shadow network, the unnamed benefactors who had funded Isabella's rise. They weren't gone. They were waiting. That night, Callista met Adrian Cross at a quiet cafe tucked on a side street. His face softened when he saw her, though the lines of exhaustion remained. They had danced around each other through years of tension, journalist and intelligence officer, reluctant allies, sometimes adversaries, sometimes almost lovers. "You're late," she said lightly as he slid into the booth opposite her. "Traffic," he replied, but his eyes held hers. And hesitation. Her heart tightened. "You're still playing both sides, aren't you? Torn between your agency's orders and your conscience." Adrian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Callista, I'm not here under orders tonight. I'm here because if Isabella's alive, you'll need me." The words landed heavier than she expected. For so long, she had carried the burden alone. To admit she needed him was dangerous. It cracked the walls she had built around herself. "Still," she whispered, "then stay. But don't make me regret trusting you." Their hands brushed across the table. The storm between them was no longer just professional, it was personal, and neither could deny it. 2 nights later, Callista's apartment door creaked open. She froze, crouched low in the shadows, gun trembling in her hand. A figure slipped inside. "Callista, it's me," Adrian hissed. Relief warred with irritation. "You nearly got shot." He tossed a folder onto her table. "New intel. Isabella isn't acting alone. She's meeting with someone called the Architect. No name, no face. But this is the one orchestrating the bigger game." Callista flipped through photographs, bank records, and coded messages. The Architect had been funding Isabella for years. Every move, every setup, every attack, it's all tied back to this ghost. "So, Isabella is just a pawn," she murmured. "A dangerous pawn. But yes." Callista set the file down. "Then we need to draw them both out. Isabella won't resist bait. And the Architect won't let their investment fail." Adrian arched a brow. "You're planning a trap." "I'm planning an ending," Callista said, her voice sharp as steel. The plan unfolded at the annual Whitmore Foundation Gala, an extravagant event dripping with wealth, power, and corruption. Callista arrived in a shimmering black gown, her emerald eyes concealed behind a mask. Adrian shadowed her, disguised as one of the guests. It wasn't long before she felt the prickle of danger. A figure in crimson silk glided across the ballroom, mask tilted, lips curled in a smirk. "Isabella." Their gazes locked like knives meeting in midair. "Brave of you to show your face here," Callista murmured as they drifted onto the balcony away from listening ears. Isabella's smile was cruel. "Braver still to think you can win." But Callista wasn't watching Isabella. She was watching the man who joined her, a tall, silver-haired figure in a charcoal suit. Cold, unreadable eyes. The Architect. At last, the ghost had a face. The gala exploded into chaos minutes later. Someone triggered the fire alarms. Sprinklers drenched gowns and jewels. Security scrambled. Callista lunged for Isabella, but the Architect pulled her back with startling strength. "You've meddled too long, Miss Rowan," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Stories end. Even yours." Adrian appeared, gun raised. "Step away from her." For a heartbeat, everything froze. The three of them locked in a deadly triangle. Then shots rang out. Screams. Glass shattered. Callista ducked, adrenaline surging. She grabbed Isabella, shoving her against the railing. "It's over." But Isabella only laughed, blood staining her lip. "No, darling. It's just beginning." And in the smoke and chaos, Isabella slipped free, vanishing once again into the night. The days that followed blurred into tension and exhaustion. Callista worked with Miles and Adrian, piecing together what they had, but the city grew restless. Anonymous threats arrived in her inbox. Once, she found a black envelope on her doorstep with nothing inside but a single chess piece, the queen. Her sleep was restless, haunted by Isabella's laughter, by the architect's icy stare. Yet beneath the fear burned something else. Determination. She would not stop now. And in her quietest moments, she allowed herself something she hadn't before, a flicker of warmth for Adrian. The way he stayed by her side, steady when her world crumbled, made the walls around her heart falter. She wondered if, after the storm, something real might remain. The end came in an abandoned opera house on the outskirts of the city. Callista had traced financial records, offshore transfers, coded meetings, all leading here. She and Adrian slipped inside, weapons ready. The stage was lit with eerie golden light. And there she was. Isabella, in black this time, standing before the architect. "You shouldn't have come," Isabella taunted, eyes glittering. "I had no choice," Callista said. "This ends tonight." The architect stepped forward, his voice silk and venom. "You think yourself a heroine, Miss Rowan, but you're merely another piece on the board." "Then watch closely," Callista snapped, "because this piece is about to topple your king." The fight erupted, gunfire, shattered chandeliers, the echo of chaos. Adrian fought fiercely at her side. Callista lunged at Isabella, the two women crashing across the stage in a brutal struggle that felt like destiny itself. In the end, it was fire again. Flames licked across velvet curtains, smoke choking the air. Callista pinned Isabella against the cracked marble wall, fury and grief colliding. "You destroyed lives," Callista spat. "You turned love into a weapon." Isabella's smile faltered for the first time. "And you," she coughed, blood on her lips. "You turned survival into righteousness." Callista didn't flinch as Isabella slipped, collapsing into the fire below. The architect tried to escape, but Adrian's bullet found its mark. The ghost fell at last, silence swallowing his empire. Weeks later, the city breathed easier. Corruption trials filled headlines. The networks Isabella once commanded lay in ruins. Callista stood by the riverside at dawn, the air cool, the water calm. Adrian joined her, quiet at her side. "It's over," he said softly. She nodded, though her eyes lingered on the horizon. "For now." He touched her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life not defined by fear or secrets. A life where love might finally find her. And as the sun rose over the city, Callista Rowan, journalist, fighter, survivor, knew one truth. The story wasn't about endings. It was about beginnings written in fire and shadow, about the courage to face betrayal, and the hope that even in the darkest moments, light could return.